Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today I have the great pleasure to be speaking to Kate Darby from the AFLW team. How are you?
Hello. I'm fantastic, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic. It's great to have you aboard. I think we tried a couple of weeks ago, but you were pretty busy with... where was it that you were
Yeah, I was up in Warrnambool with the community camp. Yeah. So I was going to be in the car, probably in the dark, and it would have been in and out of service. So it was probably best we did postpone. It could have been an interesting chat.
I mean, it certainly might be a unique one. We may never replicate anything quite like it, the dropping in and out, and it'll certainly would have made for an interesting editing affair for myself. But I think this will work much better for us in terms of creating a better show. But I guess as we begin all the shows, I kind of want to rewind to a point well before you're actually playing at the top level and kind of focus on when footy first entered your life. And I mean, would you describe yourself as one of those people that were kind of born with that footy blood, that the footy was always there, or did it come a little bit later for you?
So I had a football. It was Essendon colours because of my dad, but I had a football in my car seat as I was being driven home from hospital after I was born. So you could say I was born into a footy family, definitely. Yeah. Dad's played his whole life, and all of my family have been footy supporters. Growing up, I was a Bulldog supporter. Even though the footy was an Essendon one. And so, I've been mad into my footy for my whole life.
And how did you find yourself defecting, before we get to the golden days of the blue and white hoops, how did you find yourself defecting from Essendon to the Bulldogs at the time? Like, what was it about the Dogs that caught the eye?
Yeah, it's funny because I always say I don't like people swapping and swapping teams, but I was Essendon until I was about 4. And so my mum was a Bulldogs supporter. Yep. And my dad and my brother and I were all Essendon supporters. And because I think our local team, they were the Bombers, so that was just, and plus it was probably Dad that got me into the Bombers. And I got to an age, it was either 4 or 5, and I actually felt sorry for Mum because it was 3v1. And so I just jumped ship.
Square things up a bit.
Yeah, exactly right. And it made the Bombers and Bulldogs games a lot more interesting. It was 2v2, little family rivalry. So I jumped over to the Dogs, and I bled red, white, and blue for my whole life.
Until draft time, really?
Got to go to the 2016 granny, which was just before, it was literally a couple of months before I got drafted. I got to watch the Dogs win a grand final. So to be there and witness that as a true Doggy supporter was really great.
I mean, look, I guess it's a hard one to reflect upon. I mean, had the timing changed a little bit, and you'd been drafted prior, it still ended up same destination, still picked at Carlton there to begin with. But like, do you think you could have still enjoyed a Bulldogs premiership at that point in the same way that you did ultimately?
I think...
Like, it's always one of those things that I wonder about players that have kind of got an investment in a club for whatever the reason is. Maybe it was a family club as they were growing up. Maybe they were at one club previously and so they've moved for whatever reason. There's obviously always going to be something there. There's history. There's a love there that goes back.
And
so how do you separate those things?
I still love watching the Doggies play. Like, it's still a team that I'll support if they're not playing the Cats. When I was at Carlton, I think I was only there for one season, and the two teams didn't really cross over too much. So I didn't find myself supporting the men's team just because I didn't really know them. Yeah, but once I got to the Cats, and it's actually quite funny because when I was Bulldogs, I feel like even in our premiership season, the only team we could just never, ever, ever beat was Geelong. And so I respected Geelong.
I distinctly recall that because I thought we had it that year, and then things went pear-shaped.
Yeah, and so I was like, I've never really liked the Cats just because we can't ever beat them. And then so once I did move to the Cats, I was still like, follow the Dogs with the men's team, and then obviously we'll support the Cats outside of that. But just from being there, like, I've honestly just fallen in love with the club and the way they do it, and all the guys, like, we've got so much to do, and it's getting back to that. Before COVID, it was a lot more combined. but we're getting back to that now, which is really good. But the integration between the two teams, like you actually care about the people. They're not just players; they're people that you know and you see, and you see
friends.
you see how fantastic they are and how lovely they are, and it's like you actually find yourself wanting them to do good things. And so I remember distinctly there was a game that I went to at GMHBA, and it was dogs versus cats, and I was like, I actually don't know who. I'm just going to see who. Like I'm not going to be disappointed because I'm happy for both teams to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just not sure how it'll go. And when I went there, I found myself like actually really going for Geelong, and I was like, all right, this is the time. This is the turning point. I'm now officially
a
cat supporter.
That's fair enough, and it is certainly one of those things that's really interesting for all people who've played at that top level, and if they have been between multiple clubs, kind of seeing or learning about what that kind of point is, because it's not instantaneous. There is history, there is love, and the same idea for anyone who's been a lifelong supporter of a club and then gets drafted and suddenly kind of has to change their allegiance. Like what is that point? What does it take sometimes to shift that perspective? But that's a really fascinating one.
Yeah, and that's like, I just remember there was one point you felt so like welcome, and you felt you're just such a part of the club.
Yeah.
So it's hard, like you can't not support them. I fell in love with them. So I wanted to, I was always wanting them to do well.
Now it's blue and white for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's it. Well, my daughter, she speaks a little bit now, but she very quickly to yell out "Go Cats" anytime she sees me put this on. She's like, "Go Cats!"
Yeah, I've tried to corrupt my kids a little bit like that as well. So but I think I was almost playing the long game. My then girlfriend, now wife, was Essendon when we first met, and I guess maybe fortuitously for me that we met at just off the back of the Essendon supplement scandal. So she was feeling a little bit scorned and a bit hurt, and maybe she was a little bit vulnerable in her support for the club at the time. And then I waltzed into her life and quickly dragged her to the Geelong side to, as many games as possible. But it's worked out all right, because now with our kids, there's no push and pull from either side. It's mum and dad are both Geelong, and you get the exact same thing. Go Cats all the time.
My husband was Collingwood. But he's now Cats. Oh yeah, yeah.
So
I think he actually crossed quicker than I did.
Oh really?
Yeah, because he was a footy supporter, but he wasn't as I was a real hard
live and breathe it
footy supporter. And I think it was one day that he mispronounced one of the Collingwood players' names. And I was like, if you can't tell me more than 3 Collingwood players, you're not a supporter. And I don't think he could, so I was like, you may as well just be Cats now.
Pendlebury and and you start running a little bit light off for options at that point. Yeah, okay, very very well done in that one there. So prior to actually joining the system, what were those junior years like as you were playing footy, and obviously at this point it was still away before the AFLW had kind of been formed at that particular stage. So what was it like for you as you were growing up and having this love of footy, and what were those interactions like?
Yeah, so most of my footy was played in the backyard. Yep. We had a bit of a block out in Macedon, and we had some goalposts put in. Yeah, we had goalposts, and we had little pipes. My dad was a sparky, so I had a heap of conduit pipes and everything, and we had the pipes with the material nappies on them for the goals. And I've got plenty of video footage of us coming in at halftime and doing interviews with my mum on the camcorder. Because I only played, I think it was maybe 2 seasons of junior footy. So I started a little bit later, and it was just in the boys' league. And I remember there was a local game nearby that we were just going to watch the teams, the juniors for our club, Riddles Creek. And my brother was, just because my brother was playing. And there was a team that was playing after him, and they were short on numbers.
Yep.
And so Dad had to go home, fill in all the forms, fax them back in. And by the halftime, I was able to jump in and play.
Very nice.
And
for the Riddle Bombers.
For the Riddle Bombers against Macedon, against the Cats, actually.
Against the Cats, yeah, sorry, I'm a Gisborne person myself, so know a bit of those. Yeah, know those two pretty well.
Yeah, so donned the sash for Riddle Bombers in under 12s, and then never looked back. I played the rest of the season and the season after that until under 12s was then finished for me, and I couldn't play anymore. I think there was only 2 or 3 of us girls in the entire league.
Yeah.
And then we just had to step out because that was it, unfortunately. Finished on flag though for the under 12s,
which is always nice.
So that was pretty nice. But yeah, and then it was just pretty much once a year for school. Got to play footy one day a year, and I made sure that we had enough girls so I didn't miss out on footy day.
Yep.
There were girls that didn't care, and I'm like, oh, you don't have to play. You can go and sit in the goal square and do the hand clapping games.
Just avoid the action if you want.
On there, so then we could come out.
No, that's fair. Very, very well done. And I certainly remember my junior days, and we had a couple of girls on the team, and inarguably, actually, some of the very best players in the team that we had. And it was such a shame at that point when, exactly as you kind of described, we're no longer kind of like the system wasn't established at that point to allow them to keep playing, and it was a really disappointing thing for the team. Not just because they were some of the best, most talented players on the team, but like they were really fantastic people to have around and get to chat to, and it didn't matter. Like none of us cared. But the system being what it was, the hand was forced, and it was such a shame.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I just felt like I didn't feel like that's the girl playing or whatever. No. Like it was just like my teammates. Sometimes I had interesting interactions with other teams.
Yeah, right.
Like there was, I don't know what teams they were or anything, but there was 2 separate occasions. I remember we were setting up in our positions and whatnot, and I had one. He come up to me and he shook my hand and introduced himself, and he was like, "I'm really sorry, but if it gets to it, like I have to tackle you today." And I was like, "That's fine,
mate. You're not going to catch
football. Me." Yeah, I should have. If I was quicker as an 11-year-old, I should have said that.
Well, don't worry, I'll bury your nose in the turf first.
Yeah. But then I had some other kid run up at the start of the game and absolutely lay a huge bump into me. Right. And because we were on the wing, we were right in front of where all the parents and stuff
they're
were
watching.
And I was like, yes, get straight back into it. And we were getting into each other, before the bounce of an under 12s game.
Yeah, like it kind of, in some senses, it may sound like kind of an arsehole-ish sort of move from someone, but at the same time, like if you're out there and you've got that adrenaline pump and you want to play the game, like someone doing that, and it just kind of, we're all on the same level here, we're all playing the same game, let's go. I'd imagine there'd be that sort of attitude from you.
It's great to be like a normal opposition, which was really good.
Which is exactly what you want. And so how did things evolve from there? I mean, eventually, as we lead up to that first opportunity to get drafted to the Carlton Footy Club, as you say, just after the Dogs won the flag, so you got to enjoy that one. So how did all those opportunities start to emerge for you as the competition starting to form, etc.?
Yeah, so I thought my footy days were done and dusted. I was lucky enough from our under-12s grand final, actually through some video footage, I got to go on the footy show for the Almost Footy Legends.
Oh, yeah.
From a tackle that I did bury someone in the ground. Good. And so that was me, like, year 8, thinking that's my footy life highlight. But it must have been earlier 2016, and I was up at the Snow with my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and a couple of friends, and I was literally on a chairlift halfway through our day of snowboarding, and I had a message from another Riddle local, Tommy Sheridan, who now...
I know the name, yeah.
Who has gone through Freo and Giants and whatnot.
Yep.
So Tommy messaged me and was like, hey, random question, can you still kick your footy? And I was like, sure. Like, yeah.
Shake some dust off and go.
Yeah. He's like, I've just got some guys I know are looking for some girls for this new... women's league that's starting, and obviously I had seen the exhibition matches and stuff like that, but to be completely fair, and it may be immature of me, but I sort of didn't want to watch too much of it because I was frustrated that it wasn't me.
No, I don't blame you at all. That makes sense.
Yeah, I wanted to play so bad. I actually reached out to a local team a few years before and sort of got told in a roundabout way that they were in a pretty good league and it might have been wasting my time. So that kind of just shut me out of trying to get into women's football a bit earlier. I wish I had it now, but I mean, I'm pretty happy with
doing it right now.
And yeah, so anyway, Tommy just put us on to a couple of guys that were looking at recruiting. And I was like, oh, this will be, it obviously won't go anywhere because I haven't played for
Yeah.
13 years. But I get a tour of Icon Park and I get to meet a few, people and have a kick. And so that's all it was. And we went down and had a kick there and had a chat with them, and then had to wait a few weeks because they had a whole bunch of people that they were
Yeah, they've got a
meeting with.
process. Yeah.
And then they let me know that they were interested in picking us up in the draft, and I couldn't tell anyone because I was literally
Yeah.
in the AFL world. I was no one, and I wasn't allowed to go to the draft night, even though I was going to get picked up because again they didn't want. Like, I'm almost 6 foot. They didn't want some 6 foot person walking through and other clubs being like, who's this and why are they here and
Yeah, stand
why
out.
don't we know who they are?
That's fair.
So I sat at a bar in Southern Cross
Just
Station.
waiting.
So I was close because after my name was called, I was allowed to go in, and got picked up by the Blues that night.
No, that's really cool. And I guess leading up to that opportunity to have a bit of a tour and have a bit of a kick, I'm gathering, okay, like, here we go. Here's a chance. I've got a sniff here. Maybe you considered yourself still an outside chance or whatever. But I'd imagine in the days preceding that moment, that footy had probably never been in your hands more than it had in that period.
Yeah, it was funny, and like I'd have a few like I loved having a kick of the footy, and I had I actually got, so my husband used to play. And then my two housemates at the time, the guy that I was living with, he used to play as well.
Yeah.
And so I actually had them both go down to a local oval and we were having a kick. And I was feeling pretty good. And I actually was like, oh, I want to practice like leading for a mark or whatever. And so I had he was my boyfriend at the time next to me, and I pushed off and went up for a lead and took a great mark, and I was so pleased with myself. And I turned around and he had tripped
Done his
and was on the
ankle.
ground. And he had the 3 ligaments that on the side of the ankle, one of them had been stretched, one had been torn, and one of them had completely snapped.
And it's in that moment you go, look, this is rough, but I think I'm going to make it.
Yes. And I was like, never try and play football against me again.
And of course, you then get to the Carlton Footy Club, and you just quickly point that out. Like, okay, so I've been sure I haven't played in a while, but here's the damage I just inflicted. So keep that in mind. If you
see the guy on crutches over there, that was me. But it was probably my fitness that was the. I remember halfway having a kick with the guys at Carlton, and at the time I was a bartender and working very long hours and probably enjoying
the lifestyle.
A nightcap after most shifts. And so I remember halfway through our kick, I was panting a fair bit, and they were like, "It's all right. If we think you can play footy, we'll sort that bit out. That's no worries." And so when they did tell me we're going to draft you, but you can't tell anyone, I had the conduit in I was living down in Torquay and had the conduit in the nature strip. Like I think it was like either 80 or 100 meters, and I had been given like a certain running stuff to do for that 8 weeks. And all my friends just thought I had some like random fitness craze that I just jumped into really quickly and wasn't drinking and was trying to eat well and was running my guts off.
Of course, you can't say anything, so.
Yeah, so I was just like, no, I just want to be fit.
You'll know soon enough. What was that? Nothing. And so what was that first experience finally like when you joined the Carlton Footy Club? And as you say, it was only a couple of years initially, but what was that experience like? You obviously mentioned that there was still a little bit of a division between the men's and the women's at that particular time, not a lot of interaction. I presume something that has changed these days over there. I presume. But what was that initial experience like? Was it everything you'd kind of imagined it would be once you got in? Or what were your expectations before you got in?
Yeah, I think, I didn't really know because I hadn't been involved in any footy since my under-12s when it was just me and a bunch of 11-year-old boys just going out and having a kick around. So the all-girls footy I'd never been a part of. Obviously an elite environment had never been a part of. So it was, I think part of me was, I was actually just so impressed that there was so many girls that were good at footy. I was like, where have you all been? How come we didn't grow up together so we could have played this for years? And then I loved, like, it just, even though I was saying, I didn't support the full club because the integrate, but I was all in for our team and for what the club was doing, and I loved how special they made us feel, and like getting your own locker in an AFL club with your name on it. Like, it was all of my 11, 12-year-old dreams just coming true. I had my Essendon supporting father in Carlton polos and hats.
Oh, that must have killed him.
Yeah.
Oh,
like just the
can't imagine.
Yeah, just the whole experience, and just knowing. So I wasn't selected for that first game.
Yeah, you
But
debuted in round 2,
there-
was that right?
Yes, yeah. But being there for that first game, I remember I was an emergency, so I didn't get to see the crowd at the start. And we came out just before the girls were running out, and I was just blown. We were all teary walking up to where we were going to stand to watch. And as we're walking past the wing, the whole wing, people started realising that we were the players, everyone stood up and gave us a standing ovation. And like, it was just insane, and like trying to squish through this huge crowd to get back up to where we were sitting. It was amazing to see that turn out and to feel that I don't know, that support from the get-go.
I mean, considering what you were just saying and the kind of hype that those fans kind of experienced at the moment, are you sure you were kind of having to squish through, or did you essentially walk through and just part the seas? From
it was so packed because there wasn't even space in the aisles. There was there was no aisles. It was just like, it was actually, they were packed in like sardines. And I could see people like jumping over the fence, and it was one person sort of like looked up as if I had caught them, doing the wrong. And I was like, yeah, get in, come on.
Get around it. Yeah, that's fair, and that's awesome and a lot of fun. And so when that debut did come along the following game, what was that moment like for you? After, again, I mean, from a lot of what we've discussed so far, I'd imagine there was quite a gap between the under-12s and then getting picked and going from there. So I'd imagine you'd kind of given up on the dream potentially by this stage. So then for everything to have pivoted in such a short space of time and then be running out there for round 2, what was that moment like for you leading up to it? And then obviously, that first time the ball hits your hands, all of those sorts of moments that you get to experience for the first time.
Yeah, so there would have been probably a first time it hit my hands, and that might have been the last time that game that hit my hands. I was obviously super excited, just thinking in my head, like, this is like an AFL debut. And it sort of didn't, I don't know if it would have felt as real because the league was so brand new. And I don't know, it probably took a little bit to process. That's fair. But I had probably about 30 of my nearest and dearest there watching, and it was special. I loved it. It was really cool to be there and be a part of it, and just to be able to, like, at the time, like, just to be able to represent such a big club. And we had some of the important people of the club speak to us beforehand, and just knowing how much of a big deal it was. So it was really special to be able to do that. No,
that's awesome. And so I think I've got it right again. Round 7 would be your next game at that point. And then you were delisted at the end of that year, but it wasn't long before you then ended up joining the Cats. And so I guess, what was it like that final game, the delisting that came afterwards, but then eventually the presumed excitement about going around again with a new club?
Yeah, so the final game I actually probably remember more than my first game, because I had the job. So I was a defender when I was at Carlton, and I must say I was a lot more I was fit, but I definitely didn't have the strength that I have now after 8 pre-seasons. So my job for that game was to try and keep Sabrina Frederick-Traub from coming into the forward line. And so within maybe the first 15 seconds of the game, I had gone up to their biggest, strongest player and tried to
Keep her out of
give
it.
her a massive bump to keep, because she did a ruck contest and
Yes.
then would run straight into the forward line. And so I just ran up and hit her as hard as I could and then just copped her for the rest of the game.
Yeah, if you don't land that first one properly, then you're going to regret it, I think, for a bit afterwards.
Yeah, I landed it all right, but she was just bigger and stronger than me,
Yeah.
so she just gave it back to me for the rest of the game. There was one I wasn't ready for, and I got flattened. And I remember as soon as our game finished, I felt fine. Then my husband came up to me and he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, yeah.
Oh,
was a
look, if you
draw
don't
that
see these
game
things
too,
coming.
so that was a bit of a weird finish because it was a draw. But yeah, so then the season, fair to say, I wasn't surprised with the delisting.
Yeah.
I was in it was a tricky space that season. Obviously, I loved it, but like the amount you have to give up. Like I gave up a supervisor role, I gave up a full-time job. I was traveling 3 hours 4 times a week, hour and a half,
Yeah, I follow what you
up
mean,
and back.
It's not a small commitment.
And yeah, it's a huge commitment. And at training, I was doing quite well, and I had coaches saying that they were thinking I was ready to go, but I was missing game experience, which is completely fair enough. But I also, there was no other games to play.
How can I get the game experience if you're not giving me a game?
In between a bit of a rock and a hard place, in training well but needed game experience, but didn't get a game, so I couldn't get game experience. So I found it tricky. Loved the season, was so thankful for the opportunity, and always will be, but it was tricky. So to be able to come down to the Cats and play a season of VFL was awesome. And like the Cats, the day after I got drafted for Carlton, so the Cats didn't even have an AFLW side.
No, they were an expansion team after the fact.
Yeah, so the day after I got drafted in 2016, I had a Facebook message from Troy Selwood, which I just was screenshotting and sending to my brother, being like, "Check it out, I'm getting messages from a Selwood." And he just said, "Massive congratulations on getting picked up. We know you live in Torquay, so if you ever need somewhere to do your recovery or anything like that, please feel free to come and use our facilities." And he said, and 100% concentrate on your AFL season, but Carlton didn't at the time have a VFLW side.
Yeah.
So he said, once your AFLW season finishes, we'd love you to come down and play for the Cats if you're interested. And so obviously as soon as that delisting happened, I was like,
made all the sense in the world.
Geelong, what's going on?
And were they quick to embrace that? Like, I mean, there was no, obviously, because that's the VFL side, but they were quick to jump on that.
They were amazing. I still remember going in to have a meeting at GMHBA before that whole new stand, the premiership stand, had been built. And yeah, sitting there with the coach and the strength and conditioning coach that were at the time and having a chat and going out. And it was actually quite interesting because they had a team that were already most of the way through their pre-season. And, they were sort of like, oh, we're bringing in an AFL player, and like there was a few of us that were going and joining. But I felt really bad because I was like, there's a really good chance that you've all played more footy than I have. Like, I don't want to come in and be like, oh, yeah,
chest out and all that sort of thing.
I'm an AFL player and all the rest of it. So I was actually really nervous. But they were just such a lovely group. And still to this day, like I see players from that VFLW side, and we just had so much fun. And so it really brought, probably the hard bits for me at Carlton with the elite part of it, and the hard bits of footy disappeared, and it was just so much fun, and it just brought the pure joy back into it. And my 11, 12-year-old self inside was just like, this is what we're after.
And obviously a lot more game time at that point as well, compared to that tenure at Carlton as well, which obviously helps quite a bit too.
Yeah, heaps more, and that's what I needed. And Carlton were right; I didn't have game experience, so to be able to go out and just play heaps of games and get that, and Cats were keen on me playing as a forward, which I was stoked.
More to your strengths.
Yeah, and my dad was always a forward, so we've always been kicking goals out in the yard and all that. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed it, and then I was super stoked to be able to then obviously take the next step with the club from there.
Yeah, it's been up and up ever since, and there's been the inactive period obviously after you had your daughter Ella, but I mean the way the club has grown over the course of the years since they joined the AFLW system has just been fantastic to see. I feel like every single time I watch a game, the crowd is getting bigger and bigger and more vocal. You see more and more chatter about it, social media, all of those kind of core pillars, I guess, that are external to what is actually going on the field. But I feel like everything just continues to rise, and I'd imagine that's fantastic to see as someone who's basically been there now almost the entirety of that Geelong time in the system.
Yeah. So I'm so lucky to have seen it from, might have missed maybe a month or two of pre-season for that first AFLW season, but outside of that, was there for the first game and have been there ever since. Even when I was inactive, I was probably there more than they expected me to be.
Just go home and look after yourself.
I was literally there until the day I went into labour.
Really? The day off?
The day of labour, yeah, I was there. I was at one of the girls' games and I was like, oh, these stomach cramps are so strange. And you would think that I would have known, but I was clueless. I was supposed to go and commentate the VFL game afterwards, but I thought I'd go home for a quick rest in between.
And then all of a sudden it's go time and, okay, sorry guys, we can't do that anymore.
Yeah. But no, seeing the growth of the club and I'm not, it definitely hasn't been an easy journey. I've always been a player that's been in and out of the team and had to work really hard for my spot in terms of game time, but also in terms of just the contract season to season. So it's... you've got to make sure that you're doing your best and you're fighting for your spot every year, which is a really good thing to have.
Absolutely.
And then, I have technically been delisted from the club once before, after I came back from my inactive season. They had to make a decision on my contract quite soon after I had Ella. And so, it was they were in a tricky spot in terms of wanting to give me space.
But also having to make a decision.
And so I was always like, I'm not sure what I'm going to want to do because, I know that I'm going to have a baby and that could change. Everything, I know it's going to change everything. But I was like, so I'm not sure if I'm going to want to come back or not. But once I had her, I was like, yeah, I have more to give. And so there was one night there when I was like, this is ridiculous. I have a newborn child who is sound asleep and sleeping quite well, but I'm losing sleep over the fact that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to play again, and I'm thinking of reasons that I feel like they should sign me again.
Yeah. And not to mention, this is during 2021 as well, so there's a lot of world volatility still. Obviously, COVID is, there's still a lot of panic around COVID and all those aspects at the time. So, I totally understand the position that puts you in as well, because there's so many moving pieces that are beyond your control, as well as everything that we've just been discussing.
Oh, yeah. And I was thinking that, and because at that time they'd said that they probably didn't have space for me on their list. Yeah. It was hard for them to give me a spot that someone else could have when they're not sure if I was going to be ready in time for the season. And so that was all, understandable. But I thought I'm like, I wouldn't be content if I didn't put my piece in.
Yes.
And as long as I've, fought for my spot, then I've done what I can. And so I wrote down a list of reasons why I felt like they should give me another crack. And I put a meeting together and went through those. And unfortunately, it didn't work. They still didn't have a spot for me. But they created then a new contract that didn't exist. There was a paid train-on contract. So then I was able to access all the facilities and able to do all the training sessions, as many as I could.
To get yourself where you needed to be.
To get myself where I needed to be. And so I had everything that the girls had. I just wasn't available for
game day
selection.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. And it ended up that pre-season, I don't know whether there was no pressure on me or whatever, but I was training the house down. And so when my teammate Renee Gehring, she announced that she was pregnant, and then when there was that one spot remaining, I was like, I feel like I've done everything to nab it, and I did, which was which was awesome. I haven't looked back.
Yeah, foot back in the door, and things have been going great ever since. And I mean, that's, all credit to you, because that's sort of, I mean, that combination of circumstances could very easily just put someone off. And you knew what you wanted, and you went and chased it down. And so it's awesome, and as we've said, it's no looking back. Things are really paying off. The results have been great. The club on field is and off, but I think most Cats fans know that the off field situation of the Cats has been humming along generally pretty nicely for quite some time. It's the culture's always great, but the on field results are now really starting to build as well. It's been great to see as a Cats fan, and fantastic for you to be able to come back into the team and be a part of that as well.
Oh, yeah, and it's so good. Like, we've known that we've had good, we've always had good passages of play and exciting players coming through. And I think now that, there has been a little bit of change over the last couple of years, and to have a core group that has now been there for a while, but also bringing in some really great young talent who is just ready to play. And there is just a good feel around it, the type of footy that we're playing, and there's more confidence now with the type of footy that we're playing. We're going into games knowing every single game we've got a crack here.
Yeah, which is awesome.
So and that makes it. And as you mentioned before about the crowds building, and we've, like, Dan, the coach, has spoken about, there's particularly games where the sound of the crowd is, you would think that there was more people than what is actually in there. And when we come in and he says, like, did you hear that? Like, that's people who really care about you now. Like, at the start it might have been, we'll go and support the girls because it's the right thing to do. But there's now so many people fully invested into our team. And, if you're a supporter, you can see the growth of the just the brand of footy that we're playing. And so you would be wanting to jump on board and get excited, because I know that there's, over the next few years, there's a lot of excitement to be around for. So it's a really good spot to be.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you hear, as you say, you kind of see it, you hear it in the crowd, even, and both men's and women's. I haven't been able to get to much footy over the course of the last couple of years because of my kids, and my wife's kind of dealing with some little health issues on her end as well. So I've been a little bit more kind of nested at home in the last couple of years, and unfortunately, and I guess that's off the back of COVID as well. So not been able to see a hell of a lot of footy, but you absolutely hear it even through the TV. You hear there's a distinct difference kind of season to season. I think when it's through the TV, it stands out a bit more. But that build, and I think about moments like the Geelong Richmond game last year, for example, with obviously how that particular match ended, and like you watch it back, and I feel like I watched those final moments back several times afterwards, and you sit that alongside equivalent sort of moments in, well, I guess conveniently enough, Geelong and Richmond again in the men's last year with the mark and goal just before the end there as well, but like, they're incredibly comparable when you kind of just sit there and kind of try and absorb them for what they are, and then the camera pans to the crowd and the reactions. It's fantastic to see that, as you said, that investment is there, and it is building, and it's great for the club.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. And, like, as you say, there's a lot of our two games that are comparable. Like, yes, the guys are likely going to be stronger and jump higher and faster and that sort of stuff. And they've been playing this since they could walk.
Well, the mechanisms have been there for them,
Yeah, and the skills are going to be cleaner and that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's two equal sides competing for that 4 points, or if it's, obviously it's a final and competing for a premiership. But at the end of the day, you're watching. So in the women's, you're watching two even sides compete. In the men's, you're watching two even sides compete, and that's what is exciting, is the competitive stuff. Like, it's and when you get close games like that, and you get people that are holding their breath pumping, or on the edge of the seat, or can't watch, or you get the same emotions from it. And it's awesome. I was on the bench for that last few minutes of that Richmond game, and oh my gosh, it's so hard being on the bench when you can't do anything. You just got to watch and just pray.
How do you kind of cope with those sorts of moments if you for whatever reason can't be a part of them?
Well, that one in particular was hard because it was in our forward line, and I was one of our marking targets. And so I was like, I just want to get out there because we weren't marking anything. And I was like, I just want to try
and get someone off, hurry up.
Do something. But Prez to finish with the coolness that
Beautiful
she did
shot. Yeah.
was epic, and it was really, really good for her, I think, to have that. There's always been a bit of pressure on her, and
Well, there was a lot of noise straight out the gate due to obviously the success of her sister, and then being drafted in a high position as well. All of those sorts of factors. So
yeah, so for a girl her age, under the pressure that she was under personally, but then also the pressure of the game, to be able to finish like that, it just shows
the quality,
shows the superstar that she is, which is fantastic.
Now, obviously, you mentioned that you are one of the tall marking forwards for the team. Third all-time goal kicker at the club as well. So, I mean, let's not lose sight of that as well, is that you know how to put it between the sticks as well. So congratulations on all those achievements so far, and the many number of goals you've kicked, and hopefully the many more that are to come. But does that feeling...
Don't mind kicking a snack.
Yeah. I mean, does that feeling... I guess, even the first goal compared with your most recent, like, how does it always still just fill the heart, and like that excitement every single time you kick one never fades?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the context.
100%. And you'll see that if there's ever a photo of me after a goal, I love celebrating it. I'm always pretty excited after a goal. I get quite pumped, and because they don't really happen too often. I'd like them to happen a little bit more often. I spend a fair bit of time in the ruck these days as well. So after you do, your couple minutes, and then your ruck rotation, and then your bench rotation, you really are only getting a few minutes a quarter in the forward line. So no, I definitely love to take my opportunity when I get it, and want to make sure I work on taking every opportunity as we would all like to do.
Well, I mean, we've got results like a 3-1 performance against Brisbane in round 5 2019. So let's hope, as Cats fans, myself talking to you and those watching and listening, that we see a few more of those big bags from you going forward as well. It'll be fantastic to see.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind having another game like that. That was a pretty good day. I think my parents missed a big birthday or a wedding or something to fly up for that game.
Oh, and you put a show on for them.
It was a last-minute decision, and so I think they were pretty happy with that.
Well, I bet, yeah, you've turned it on, so that's awesome to hear. And so I guess as we start to drift towards a new season, it's a little way off yet, but how are things shaping up?
Yeah, I think everyone's just so keen to get back into it. We've got a few opportunities like the club has put out. Obviously, there's nothing officially going at the moment, but just a bit of fun things to stay active and keep catching up together. So we've had some tennis, some cardio tennis sessions. We've done some boxing. We've done some volleyball. We've done some what other? Yeah, like some random little running things, and so just fun stuff to be able to keep catching up and keep in touch and keep fit and healthy and whatnot. But I think everyone's super keen for it to get into it again, and especially where the club is at the moment. Like, we just know we're playing really well, and we're really excited to be able to compete again. I mean, everyone's just keen to get to crack in and work really hard. And I feel like everyone feels, quite good about this next season and the one after, and, whatever might be to come. So I feel like everyone's just wanting to get to work. But we just have to sort of sit and wait for whenever we get the tick. But I'm lucky enough to be involved with the Geelong Falcons in the meantime as well. So being able to help a little bit there and help with obviously the VFL girls too.
So do you have a date yet in terms of, you mentioned the tick? Do you have a date yet in that's established for when everyone can kind of get back together and really get into the swing of things properly?
No, not
still
that
waiting that a bit.
Yeah. So I believe it's going to be mid-May.
Yep. That
pre-season we should officially start, but I'm not. Yeah, we haven't really been given anything yet, so that's just a guesstimate.
Yeah, but there's plenty, as you say, there's a few things that are going on. You get some of the community centric things that you've been doing as well, so plenty of opportunities to kind of keep fit, keep engaged with everyone in the club, and gives you a bit of family time still in the meantime as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And, as at the moment we're in between houses and living out of a caravan, so it's actually probably limited chance I do get, because my husband's back and
Yeah.
forth. I'm here a fair bit with the 2-year-old by myself. So leaving the caravan, I can't exactly be like, you hang out there, Dal. I'll be back in a couple of hours. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go.
Don't mind me, just
Gonna
going to
go
go play
training.
footy.
But I actually had my first, so we're able to join in on the VFL training on one
Yeah.
night a week if we're wanting. So I did my first training back on Tuesday night. I think I picked the windiest night of the decade, but at least I had an excuse if a few kicks were a bit skewy.
Was it just good to get the lead out of the legs, though?
It was so good, and it was like I just walked in and having my bag, my boots, and walking in, putting my training shirt on. I was just so happy. I was like a
Kid
little
in a
kid.
candy store.
Yeah, it was just so good to get back out there and see a bunch of girls and have a chat and have a kick. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved it.
No, that's awesome. And I guess one final thing before we start to wind things down. I mean, as you say, training's still a little way off the season, then a little bit further down the line from there. But I mean, how are you feeling about this new current season? Obviously, there was a lot of growth as we've already discussed in terms of the on-field results. But the list is starting to build up in a really fantastic way. So how are you personally feeling about the coming pursuit of a premiership?
I'm just really keen. I'm not under any, how do I say? I know that my time's quite limited.
Yeah.
I'm officially always called a veteran now by the commentators. So if I didn't know already, I do now. But no, and I said to the guys in my exit meeting about coming back and whatnot. I said I'm not here to. I said it in different words, but I said I'm not here to stuff around.
Yeah.
You're
here to take the team all the way.
Yeah, I want to win a flag. That's the goal, and we know that there's still a lot of work before that, but we know that that's not out of our reach, and we know that given our better form last season, we're probably going to be put against the stronger teams. But you know what? To win a flag, you have to play against the stronger teams, and so we're just super keen for the challenge. Obviously, so the trade period started yesterday or today or something like that. So I've got no idea as to whether anything might happen there, but I feel like we've got a really solid group, and I feel like everyone's quite keen on sticking around. I feel like there'd be no reason that you'd want to leave the team at the moment. So if we can keep that as it is and head into next season, it's an exciting time, and I think the girls will just be really keen to try and take another step forward after last year and really prove ourselves against the top teams, because we had a few chances to prove ourselves against some top teams last season and we just couldn't get over the line. And I feel like if we just need to work on making sure we make the most of those opportunities. Yeah,
that next step, and who knows then, the sky's the limit. And for you personally, at this point, 31 AFLW games under your belt, there's a 50-game milestone that's not that far away when we think about it. How do you feel about chasing that one down?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to play 50. As I said earlier, it's been a bit of a longer road than most, being in the system from day one, but with a delisting season out and then a season out with having my daughter and in and out of teams and whatnot, it hasn't been easy, but would probably make it a lot sweeter if I did get the big 5-0. So yeah, it'd be obviously incredible if I could get there. But as for it could have been my last season 7 years ago. It could have been my last season 2 years ago when I had Alice. So I'm just taking every game as a bonus, and if it ends up getting to that, then I'd be obviously stoked.
Well, again, I think speaking for everyone watching and listening, I think we've all got the fingers crossed that you can get to that milestone, and that obviously the on-field success continues as well. That again, we continue to build upon the foundations of last year, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing you cross that 50-game milestone and again kicking a few more bags along the way.
Yeah, thank you. I just keep wanting to run out in the hoops, and that'll keep me happy.
So as we start to wind things down, some kind of larger scale questions here that aren't necessarily you focused. from your perspective, and obviously you've been at the Cats for well, you haven't been a Geelong fan all your life, but you've really adopted them these days. Who's the greatest Cat of all time in your eyes?
Ooh. Well, as you say, so because I wasn't
Yeah.
invested in the club when I was younger, I'm probably going to be
It's a more
looking
recent
more
perspective, yeah.
looking more modern. I didn't really see much of Gary in his best days.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for him as a player, and as a person, he's just incredible. But probably for the way, and it sounds so cliche, but for the way that he's led on field, off field, played, and the way he's finished at the absolute pinnacle, Joel has
That's
to
fair.
be, yeah, like he's an incredible human. And seeing a bit of the background stuff of how he goes about it and how he just gives everyone so much time, and when he really doesn't have that much time, he's a special person, a special player.
Yeah, and I mean, like as a fan, I think we always had this understanding up to a point of all the things that Joel was doing and what he was capable of and what he was giving to everyone around him. But I think, since he's drawn the curtain on the career, and we see and hear more things coming out. We see the documentary that went up on Fox Footy the other night, and there's more and more that's still to come, I'm sure. It really continues to highlight just how generous he was with, as you say, what little time there was with all the responsibilities he was taking on. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, and you never felt rushed when you were with him, or he would remember you and remember things about you and ask you about your day, and he was always just that really kind, genuine person.
Yeah.
I'd always had respect for him as the player that he was. But I think that's part of what I loved about the grand final was, he cops a bit from other teams in terms of, the ducking
Duckwood and all that
stuff
sort of
and
rubbish.
all. Yeah, because he just puts his head in and goes hard at the footy.
God forbid.
But I feel like even some people that were a bit skeptical about him saw the side that we all get to see, like when he was carrying Levi out.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd cry that early at the grand final, but he got me. And just little things like that, and the time that he gives to the Oz kickers, like he went straight over and got a group photo with them at the end of it, and like he obviously did, but instead of going straight over to your team and celebrating your grand final, you're going over and giving these 20-odd kids just that time to say thanks and say good day and get a photo, and that would mean the world to them. Yeah. But he just does those little things that would mean so much to everyone else. He just makes sure to do those things along the way. So, yeah, for a few reasons, I'll have to go with old Skip. Old Skipper.
I'm certainly with you on the early tiers where I was positioned on grand final day. It was only a couple rows from the front, and it was right near the race. So I did have kind of a up close look at what was going on, and yeah, there was a few that snuck out. So. And I don't blame anyone really, but I think I could be forgiven for that too. But like it was really, really amazing moment. And then even other things like Sammy Morefoot after the game as well, and that got beamed around the world. That particular piece of the footage, it was fantastic to see.
I'm friends with Sammy, and I think he's still in stardom. Like I caught up with him for a coffee at Warren Ponds like a couple months ago, and the amount of people that sort of look at me like, oh, that's Sammy.
That's really, really cool, actually. So, schoolyard pick style question for you. And I think I might know where you're going just because there's been a little bit of an interaction anyway over the time. But if you had Gary Jr., had Gary Sr. side by side, and you get the opportunity to pick one to start your team, which way are you going to go? Well, we've already got a gun forward here in yourself that's kicking a few bags anyway, so maybe it becomes obvious that it has to be Junior,
I probably need Junior to get it out and give it to me. And that's I love Gary Junior. I've been lucky enough to meet Senior once.
Oh, nice.
I don't probably not. I just got told, so I actually see the same. I have appointments with the same person that he does, okay. And on my way out, she told me I've actually got him in next. And as I went out, I saw him and I was like, oh, "G'day, how you going?" And it was the shortest little thing, but I walked out and I was
But
like,
you got the moment.
Gary Senior.
Yeah, that's a tick.
Yeah.
So that's an awesome moment. But yeah, you need someone to feed all those goals to you.
Yeah,
So
exactly
you've
right.
got
And the way
Junior. No
that
offense, Senior.
the way that Junior just comes out, well, like he's got all the time in the world, and we'll put it lace out. Yeah, I definitely I wouldn't mind being on the end of that.
That's fair enough. Going into a new season, obviously there's a lot of people, and we've spoken already about that build of the fan base for the women's team. Who is someone that should really be on the radar of fans that perhaps, for whatever reason, maybe didn't get as much game time, or is just this up and comer that perhaps we need to be keeping a close eye on going forward? Is it? And I know, sorry, it's almost like picking your favourite child sort of thing that I've just gone and thrown at you. But is there any or multiple people that we should be keeping a close eye on going into the new year or new season?
Oh, there will be multiple, I reckon. She's definitely not someone that no one would be watching already, but
Yep.
I just love Darcy Maloney and
Yep.
how she goes about everything in her footy. She's constantly doing everything she can to be a better player. So Darcy, I reckon, will be one to watch. She's just a competitive beast and will do whatever she can to make our team better. Who else?
I mean, there's so many great selections though, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the thing, like and there's so many people. It's funny because I think the reason we're playing well at the moment is because so many people are just doing really well at playing their role.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You don't need a team of people who need to be, the superstar of the game, but you need people to play their role. And like one of my favourite, and like I'm allowed to say she's one of my favourite teammates. We used to live together, Becky Webster.
Yep.
So she's like my daughter of the of the team, and she is an absolute jet alongside those
Agreed.
other mids. She might not pick up the same amount of possessions or whatnot when she is in the mid, but the work that she does for those girls to get the ball is just unbelievable. And so she might not be as one for the fans notice as much as your Amax or your Georgie Prasparkases, but she is an absolute jet. Without Becky. Oh, she's so valuable. Yeah. Yeah. And just a great person. She's just, you can't not be happy when you're hanging out with Becky Webster.
No, that's awesome. And I guess there's a couple names for Cats fans for you putting on the radar if you haven't already been doing so.
And I feel like did you guys speak to little Chooka Plummer?
We did, yeah. The episode,
I'm
when we
hoping...
record this, the episode hasn't been put out publicly yet. But
okay.
yeah, don't worry, it's knowledge that it's available. Like Patreon people, if you want to subscribe to the Patreon, you'll get access to that right now. Brooke's been on the show as well. And
Chooka, I'd love for Chooka to get a bit more experience and get in. She's such a great natural footballer, so it'd be really good once she finds a spot in the team and gets more consistent games. I reckon she'll be a lot of fun to watch too.
Awesome to hear. And so as we wrap up, I guess I should really make sure to congratulate you on everything that you've done in the game so far. Fantastic 31 games so far. Again, we're looking forward to the 50th. Looking forward to many more goals. Looking forward to seeing you along with the other girls, hopefully hoisting up a flag at the end of the coming season. We're all really excited. And yeah, please, congratulations on everything you've achieved so far.
Thank you so much. I just feel so thankful of being able to have a journey in the system.
And if anyone does want to learn a bit more about you and what you're up to, of course, there's the club channels and platforms, but you are on platforms like Instagram, for example. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I think it's at Kate Darby on the Instagram, and there's a little bit of 2-year-old toddler spam and a little bit of footy stuff, but no, it's a lot of fun too.
It's what you do when you have cute kids, though, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, she's adorable.
So, for anyone watching the video version, I'm sure you've already noticed, is right there above Kate's head right now. So make sure to check out the social channels and see more about what she's up to. But as I said, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing this journey so far. Really excited for the coming season. Really excited for Game 50, and I hope that everything goes well in the lead up to this coming season.
No, thank you so much. And I know that I speak on behalf of the girls, and we cannot wait to crack in. And we hope to do everyone proud. And if we can lift up the cup at the end of it, that'll be the dream for the whole Cats community.
Yeah, it'll be amazing if that happens, and we sincerely hope it does. Cats fans, please make sure, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to The Hoop Show on YouTube, Behind the Play on podcast services, and make sure to support Kate and the girls going into this new season, because I suspect I'm not speaking just for myself here, but things are looking really, really good, and I'm really excited to see what's to come. Otherwise,
Definitely.
remain Geelong strong, be one in the hoops, and we'll see you next time.